try to create a theme. You can tell me if I'm on the money or not. Greenwashing in the world of energy.
Well, that's one of them.
Hi, Catherine. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Hello, hello.
Mike.
Are you in Senate Health and Welfare room?
Not this time.
Mike has been zooming into our committee meetings from our committee room. It's pretty funny.
And I've been seeing a lot of you in Elkhart.
Look at all these Ruths on the screen. There are 3 of us. That's so exciting.
Hey, that's weird.
It is weird. 3 Ruths on a Zoom. I've never had that happen.
The harmonic convergence of roots.
I love it.
Okay, we might as well get started. It's 7 o'clock. For those of you that weren't here when I introduced myself, my name is Sally Short. I am the Senate caucus aide for the Democratic caucus in the state Senate. And we are joined today by our Addison district senators. So if you guys want to introduce yourself, we can get started. And I think you might give a little update on the committees that you're working on and legislation that you all are debating about.
Sure. So I'm still old-fashioned, ladies before gentlemen. You can tell me that's wrong, but so Ruth, you want to go first?
Okay, sure. Good evening, everyone. It's really great to see you all. Thank you for joining us. And it's especially, as I was saying, so exciting to see 3 Ruths on the screen. But all of you, it's exciting to see your faces. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ruth Hardy. I'm one of the 2 state senators that represents the Addison district. And I'm joining you from East Middlebury, where I live with my family. And in the Senate, we serve on 2 legislative committees. In the morning, I serve on the Health and Welfare Committee, where I'm the vice chair. And in the afternoon, I serve on the Finance Committee, along actually with Senator Bray. So Addison, the district, is well represented in the world of finance. But in the Health and Welfare Committee, we are doing a lot of really important bills. But first, I wanted to tell you about a big bill that we all passed last week called the Budget Adjustment Act. Usually the Budget Adjustment Act is a sleepy kind of bill that just adjusts the current year's budget and makes technical changes. But this year, it was a pretty comprehensive bill with a lot of funding in it in order to especially shore up community healthcare and human services areas. And it included over $60 million for workforce retention and recruitment grants for employers. And those were specifically for things like healthcare, our designated agency, mental health services, home health and hospice, childcare, and a lot of the areas that are really struggling right now. It also included a significant amount of money for housing, as well as a whole host of other things. So it was quite a big bill and took a little bit longer than normal, but we passed it last week, and I believe it's on the way to the governor's desk. We've also passed major housing bills, and we have another large housing omnibus bill on the way. In health and welfare, we're working on a number of things, including a bill about hospital sustainability and global payments for hospitals. And this is a very complicated area, healthcare financing, but it will include a robust community engagement process that hopefully all of you will be able to join in as we talk about this in Addison County and how to make our healthcare system more sustainable and more affordable for all of us. And we also have passed a bill that I was a co-sponsor of about planning and care for people with Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's is a disease that impacts a large number of Vermonters, and this bill will hopefully improve our planning process, make it more integrated into other healthcare planning and planning for the aging, and also with a specific focus on support for families impacted by Alzheimer's. We also passed a bill about parent-child centers. Parent-child centers are centers that provide childcare, but also support for families who are need more support to raise their children, often young parents, teen parents, and parents living in poverty. And this would be a bill that would provide funding for parent-child centers, but also provide more structure for the parent-child network. There are 14 of them around the state, including one in Addison County, the Parent-Child Center in Middlebury. We're also working on a bill about mental health peer respite centers and being able to create more peer respite centers for people experiencing mental health challenges, and also a bill about student mental health, among many other, but those are some of the highlights. In the afternoon, the thing I wanted to talk to you about that I've spent more than a ton of time on over the past year is in the Finance Committee, we're working on a bill that would overhaul the way that we fund our schools, not the way that the formula we use to fund our schools, in order to provide more support and taxing capacity for local schools that have students living in poverty, English language learners that are supporting small schools in very rural areas of the state, and also additional capacity for middle school and high school students. This is based on research done by a team of researchers at UVM and Rutgers University that showed that these students are more expensive to educate, and therefore we need to shift our the way that we weight these students. So in shorthand, we call it the pupil weighting bill. So I've been taking the lead on that, and happy to get in the weeds with any of you who want to. Just really quickly before I turn it over to Senator Bray, we also are working on reapportionment this year, which is redistricting. After the 2020 census, we have to redistrict all of our Senate and House seats, and that bill is in the works, although we are not done yet. And finally, we are working on a bill that just passed out of our Government Operations Committee last week about teacher and state worker pensions. Our pension system was sort of it is kind of in a crisis, and we're working to overhaul that to make sure that our pension funds are sustainable into the future. So I am happy to answer questions about these things and other things, but for now, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Bray to talk about his work. So thank you.
Thanks, Senator Hardy. So I look forward to someday when we get to do more of this in person again. But for now, it's pretty great that anyone can beam into a meeting, and there is a positive side to all that. And so I also just want to pause and say hello to people that I really have hardly seen in 2 years. So like Ellen and Linda Moore, because she's a neighbor, Nate and Mike Fisher, who I see from time to time, Debbie, Susan, I'm going down the screen, Darla, Sally, I see Linda Harmon, who I haven't seen in person for a long time. I see Chris Winters, and I'm not sure if that's our Deputy Secretary, Chris Winters, but if it is, great to see you. Great candidate for the secretary position for the year coming. And Anna Rose Benson, Barb Wilson. So I know I'm not getting everyone, but good to see you all. And look forward to doing it in person. As Ruth has mentioned, I serve with her and 5 other senators on finance in the afternoons, my mornings, which is really where I've put my sort of heart and soul in the last 8 years, has been sharing Senate Natural Resources and Energy, because this is an area where we're seeing huge challenges in the form of climate change, for instance, and huge opportunities at the same time. So I'm going to focus my remarks there, and happy to talk about other things too, or go into more detail on what we've been doing. So everyone knows we're receiving a lot of federal money through a variety of different bills that have come out of Congress. And the good news is for the natural resources world is that we're receiving unprecedented levels of funding for especially for our clean water work, which is very expensive. When you start replacing wastewater treatment facilities, sewer systems, et cetera, it's a very expensive proposition. And so we're going to be able to bring money to the table to help towns around Addison County to address clean water issues that will help us clean up our streams more and clean up the lake that they all flow into. We have challenges that are going to take a long time to turn around, but we're really getting a big boost out of federal funding on clean water work. We started last year a weatherization for all program. Some people call it weatherization at scale. We've had for 20 plus years a great low-income weatherization program in the state of Vermont. But it tends to serve people in like Addison County income terms. It's only been available to people making roughly $36,000, $38,000 and less. And that program comes in and does a complete energy audit and then looks at weatherizing your home. It also looks at health-related hazards, and it looks at, for instance, do you have vermiculite for insulation anywhere? Do you have a leaky roof that would make it, would spoil the effort of weatherizing when you're going to have water coming in? So it's a holistic look at housing and addressing housing and energy costs for lower income Vermonters. So it's great that we have that program. But we know that there are lots of people with incomes above 36,000 or so that would love to do more on weatherization. So the program is already working to address more middle income Vermonters, bringing more services to them to make it more affordable. And I think everyone knows the story. You know, when we buy fossil fuels to heat, and we are a very fossil fuel dependent state, for our heating needs, we ship that money out of state. And when we weatherize, we reduce our costs. And the pathway to reducing those costs means we're hiring neighbors to come in and do that work. And so it's a money saver for Vermonters. It also, weatherization well done, also improves indoor air quality. And we've learned a lot over the last 5 years about how the health benefits of better indoor air quality. People miss less work, kids miss less school, incomes go up, and healthcare costs go down. In fact, there are places now in Vermont where weatherization is being prescribed under Medicare because it is more cost effective to fix the indoor air quality issues of a home than it is to see someone come back to a hospital time and time again. So for pulmonary issues, usually. So we're aiming to double and double again what we're doing on weatherization, and that will take our current target, our current status, which is roughly 30,000 homes in the last 20 years, and push it all the way to 120,000 homes by the end of the decade. So it's an ambitious program, but we've received federal funding that's letting us step up. We went from roughly 2,000 homes a year ago to 3,000 this year. We're aiming to go closer to 4,000 in the coming year, and then to keep on growing that number over the years so we can get more and more work done. So I went on a little bit of length there, but that's because to me, it's such a solid investment by Vermonters in other Vermonters. You know, it's like we save energy, we save money, we reduce the emissions that are driving climate change. So it truly is a win-win-win. It's not just one of those cliched terms. And then I'll just talk about one other thing. There's more going on, but environmental justice. So we just passed an environmental justice bill. S148 is the number. It recognizes that state benefits don't go evenly to Vermonters all around the state. And, one way that you can see it is in that a town that has a bigger sort of town office with grant writers is more capable of pulling in grant money to do good work than a smaller town without anyone to do that grant writing. So there's like that's one small example of many things that tend to sort of fall out along the lines of those who are better served are good at getting better served. And there are populations that tend to get less service, and we want to be able to see that more clearly and recognize it and then make adjustments so that we treat people more fairly and equitably, don't sort of accidentally continue to disadvantage populations. So what we're really talking about in concrete terms is that lower income Vermonters tend to get less service as people of minority communities, so members who are Vermonters who are either Black, Indigenous, or people of color, as well as people who have limited English language proficiency. So that might be more typically, like immigrants who are less capable of engaging and using community services and government services. So the program, with the bill we just passed, says that every state agency over time needs to see how it's spending its money, inventory it first, then address who's receiving those, and then put together a plan for making sure that they reach out to communities that are underserved and make corrections in that. And that is going to be, I would say, a decade of work to make that real and to make that the new default for how we do our work. But I think it's a really long overdue change, and I think it's going to make Vermont a more just and fair and balanced place to live. So I'll stop there and say thanks very much for sending me off to Montpelier. It's the most exciting and challenging job I've ever had, and I love doing the work. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. So I think because we are a smaller group tonight, that traditionally I would have people put their questions in the chat and then moderate it that way. But I think because we're a small group, if people just want to use the raise your hand function on Zoom to ask a question, we can just kind of do a roundtable. But to start, there were a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll start with those. From Nathan, the federal government will give a 40% tax credit when you convert to either propane, natural gas, or electricity. Does Vermont provide a tax incentive for this, or are the incentives only for new vehicles?
I'm looking for that question, so I make sure I understood it. I'm not seeing the same chat, I guess, that you are. Can you restate the question, Nate, so I make sure I heard it properly?
Sure. When you go out and buy a new EV, you get a federal tax credit. You can get a state tax credit. There is also in the federal plan a system where you can get an aftermarket alternative fuel vehicle tax credit of up to 40% of the project, where you take your gasoline engine and convert it to either propane, natural gas, or turn it to electric. And I wanted to see if we do have a state program like that. I've tried to talk to Efficiency Vermont, and of course, they only know about the new car deal. And if you actually look at the federal regulations, it takes you quite a while to find the aftermarket clause. So I'm not sure if it's just something that's being missed because it's new,
Right.
or if it's something that needs to be addressed, because you can get a lot farther ahead if you can convert a lot of the vehicles that are already on the road to another fuel instead of waiting to go through the whole process of putting them through the scrapyard and scrapping them out and then buying a new Tesla or whatever. So this could get us where we need to go and lower the carbon footprint quite a bit in the direction, as well as speed it up.
Right. Well, so thanks for that question. And there's a little awkwardness because although we're the energy committee and we would like to manage more things related to energy, including transportation energy, there is also a transportation committee. And they have their own way of looking at things. So we're working with the Transportation Committee, and one of the things that we have bringing to their attention is exactly what you're saying. It's like, it's great that we have incentives for new EVs, but the average, well, 2/3 of the cars sold in Vermont are used cars, and they tend to stay on the road for 11 years.
Mhm.
So if you don't look at the used car market, you're leaving a lot of people behind and unprovided for in terms of trying to reduce emissions, participate in that sort of clean energy future we talked about. So we're looking right now to see if we can bring incentives to exactly what you're talking about. You don't necessarily have to go to a zero emission vehicle, but what if you go from something that's burning, that's 12 miles to the gallon, and you can find a replacement that's 30. You'd still even be a gas vehicle, but you can get a substantial reduction in use. So we're trying to look at how we can craft incentives that aren't just for 100% EVs. I'm not as familiar whether or not compressed natural gas can get the same benefits, but most people end up talking about EVs. So we're looking to a little bit like the weatherization, to do more for more people than just a small subset. So I don't have a complete answer, but I can follow up with my transportation colleagues, because I know that this year we have, we divvy stuff up House to Senate. And one thing is the House is doing they are leading on transportation energy issues. And the Senate has agreed to follow on second. So I'll get in touch with my House colleagues and ask them exactly about this, and then get back to you directly.
Appreciate it, because now is the time. I've been talking about doing my 47 Chevy. I'm getting that in the works, and in the process of doing it, I've got 3 other people that want me to convert vehicles for them. And I'm looking at it going, I might as well lease my old garage that I sold and do this just as the sole purpose of the shop. So now there's definitely a need. There are people around with the talent and ability to do it, and it's time to get it rolling.
Right.
And thank you very much.
Well, can I ask a really quick question? What's the power going to be for your 47 Chevy?
I'm going to put a Tesla motor and drivetrain right in the back of it. Take the rear end right out, slap it right in there, and away you go. It'll be a rat rod when you see it going down the road, but
Right. Well,
it won't be the noisy version.
Yeah. Maybe you'll bring it to Bristol Parade this year.
Definitely. That's what I'm doing it for, basically, so I can advertise the service, get people looking at it. It's so easy to do it. And when you got Ford with 200,000 orders already for an electric pickup truck that they haven't even built yet, it's like the need is there.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the question.
Thank you.
We'll go next to the next question in the chat, and then I'll go to Ellen and then Victoria. But in the chat, Catherine asked that she is interested to know what the legislative work on Act 39 now includes. This was passed last year, I believe.
Actually, so I'll take that one. Act 39 was a bill that was passed, I think 13 years ago at this point, I believe, and it is the medical aid in dying bill that allows people to end their life peacefully if they have been diagnosed with a terminal illness through the help of medication. The Senate passed a bill earlier this session that would update Act 39 and make some changes to the process. There's a very long process that patients, once they're at the end of their life, need to go through in order to acquire the medication that they can use to end their life. And it required a few things: a 48-hour waiting period. After they've made two requests, they have to make 2 requests, 15 days apart, and then there's an additional 48-hour waiting period. They also were not able to make their request via telemedicine. And there was also some concerns and confusion about liability issues for medical providers that were not physicians, like nurses or hospice care workers that may be involved in the process. So what the bill S74 does is that it eliminates the final 48-hour waiting period, and it does allow telehealth for the request of the medicine if the provider has deemed that it is medically okay to do it via telehealth, clinically appropriate. And then the final thing is it clarifies that there is not liability issues for other people involved in the process. And it makes a few other technical changes, but it sort of updates the bill to bring it into a post-COVID era and allowing for, and it would be full video. There's not audio only telehealth allowed, but full video and audio telehealth. So that passed the Senate a couple weeks ago, and it is now over in the House Human Services Committee.
Can I ask more about that, Ruth?
Sure.
I was involved in it in Oregon, and in Oregon, it had to be administered by, I think, a nurse who actually brought it to the patient, brought the liquid to the patient. Can you tell me how that works here?
In Vermont, it is prescribed through a pharmacy, and it's the pharmacy that there's only one pharmacy that participates right now. And that was one of the reasons we clarified the liability issue. So more pharmacists would feel comfortable participating. The pharmacist who participates and provides the medication now usually delivers it himself to patients or uses a courier service if he is not able to deliver it. And then a hospice worker is generally present, or a physician is generally present. But the patient themselves, the person themselves, must take the medicine themselves.
Do they have to mix it up, or is it all ready to go when the pharmacist brings it?
I believe it's mixed with liquid, but I don't know the specifics of that. But I believe it's a liquid that a person drinks.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next we will go to Ellen.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I won't go into the spiel about just generally nothing is happening since in terms of the general goal, right? Everybody included, nobody out, public financing, healthcare for all. But I will say, I did want to, since it's great that you guys are here, and actually, Mike, I'm glad you're here because I had something to say about two specific bills. And so the first is S285, which I just want to say two things for people listening, that the Green Mountain Care Board has come forth with a request for $5 million to do something that they say is new in healthcare. I've read through the proposal. It's mostly same old language, increase quality, maximize access, and minimize costs. Not a lot of new ideas, but they do say in the bill that there will be community engagement. So here is my plea. Everything that has come through that has said community engagement has not had it. Last summer, there was legislation to create a Senate task force on affordability and accessibility in healthcare. It used words like community engagement. None was given. It's given to what are called stakeholders, which usually ends up being someone like the hospitals, the insurance company, the drug. So I would really, really urge you, since the big picture is still not there, as you know, right? No progress toward universality. Let's at least have something written in that means that community engagement is, like a meeting where anybody can walk in and say what their problems are, because that has not happened. And in fact, with the Senate task force this past summer on affordability and access to healthcare, people wrote letters to that task force because there was no community engagement. And they even didn't put all the letters in their appendix. They kind of, changed the record. So that's my first plea. And because also with $5 million, which you plan to allocate for this, if you used it, let's say it better do something, because if you did direct access to healthcare for this, you could fund 50,000 teeth cleanings and 50,000 mental health therapy sessions, and you could do a whole lot of direct healthcare. So if it's going to be $5 million advocated and there's going to be community engagement, I just plead that that actually be so. I don't think Vermonters have had that chance for a long time. And the second thing, actually, Mike, I'm glad you're here. There's another bill that would help people who get stuck with Medicare Advantage, which is often made to look like a good deal till somebody gets sick and then they try to get off and get back onto regular Medicare. And there are lots of barriers. And one thing, and that's a great idea to make it easier, but one thing I noticed in that bill is there's no guaranteed issue. So it, we have guaranteed issue we did that many years ago, I think under, I don't know what governor, but there is no guaranteed issue for Medigap insurance in that bill. So somebody, it's just trying to get rid of some of the late penalties. So somebody could get quite ill, have Medicare Advantage discover too late, because they're kind of side stars, that their Medicare Advantage plan does not cover what they need. They can attempt to get back into regular Medicare, which they can do, and then they need Medigap. And I think if you could add some kind of guaranteed issue, which I think the other 3 or 4 states that have put in legislation for this have done. So that's just a kind of wonky thing, but could affect a lot of people who are, Medicare Advantage.
Okay, Ellen,
That's it. Yeah.
There are a lot of people who want to, and so
Yeah.
I'm going to answer your questions.
Yeah.
Mike, I'll answer them. And if I need your help, I'll
That's it.
ask you.
Yeah. I was just
I
trying to
appreciate
explain
your passion for these issues. I just want to make sure everybody who has questions.
Yeah, no, that's it. I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good. Yeah, those are the two.
Two things for the audience who might not know. Mike Fisher, who's on the screen there, he is our healthcare advocate, and he works for Vermont Legal Aid as the advocate for regular people who are trying to access healthcare. And Ellen, as I said to some people, is an expert healthcare advocate and follows our committee well. So S285, as I mentioned at the beginning, is a bill that would work on hospital sustainability and global payments for hospitals, which would be really one big payment for a hospital to provide all of its services. Essentially, that's the simplistic version of it. And this would help move us toward that in an effort to make our hospitals more sustainable and also make it more affordable for people. There is a community engagement process. And Ellen, just this afternoon, I was on a long call with our legislative counsel attorney about that language. I've also met with the Green Mountain Care Board and Porter Hospital and others this week to make sure that we have really shored up language in that area. Mike knows, he and I were furiously texting during the meeting about how much it matters to me that we have really good community engagement. I know you felt burned in the past. I totally understand that. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen. I'm only one person, but I'll do the best I can. And I think Mike and I have each other's back on this part for sure. And then to your point about the Medicare, the other bill, and it is complicated. And let me see if I get this right, Mike. There's there's the Medicare supplemental plans, which are the plans that when you're 65, you can sign up to get, and you're supposed to keep them the whole time, and you have 6 months to do it. And if you don't, then it's hard to get on one, and it's also hard to change to a different one. Then there's the Medicare Advantage plans. Those are different. Those are essentially a private plan that's taking the place of Medicare. Those are federally regulated, and we really can't do anything about them. The Medicare Advantage plans, unfortunately, the state can't regulate them. The Medicare supplemental plans is what we're trying to ensure that there's an annual time when you can sign up for them, just like with regular insurance. And that's what the bill's goal is, so people don't get stuck in a Medicare supplemental plan. It is still in the works. I will take a look at the language that you're talking about and see what we can do. So I'm gonna, I think, leave it at that for now. And did I get anything wrong, Mike?
No, you got it right, but can I just, if I can just say, one sentence.
Just
the
quickly,
intent-
because we got 4 other people with questions.
The intent of the bill is to do exactly like Ellen said, is to provide for an annual guaranteed issue open enrollment period.
Okay.
So we'll make sure that language is
Good.
in there. We have another crack of the bill next week. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you. I
I do
wasn't
want to,
where to
before we
where to
go
put that.
on, chime in a little on the community engagement part, because that is one of the first provisions for what every operating area in government has to engage in as part of the environmental justice bill. Because environment, in the case of environmental justice, is actually a very broad definition and includes all the factors that affect the health of your community, including things like transportation, housing, access to healthcare. It's not only about clean air and clean water. And just as Senator Hardy's talking about and Ellen's talking about, how well do we actually do the task of community engagement? I would say the legislature itself and many operating areas in government have not been spectacular at it. So there's a learning curve for all of us. And that's why I said I think it will take a decade to really make it a genuine way that we do all our work in government. So stop there.
Okay, great. Next on my list is Victoria.
Hi there. I wanted to ask about the bottle bill. It was a great follow-up from the House to the plastic bag ban. And I would really like to see it move forward in a timely manner. And it's been in your committee, Chris, for a while, and I'd love to hear what your plans for it, because we really need this bill.
Sure. Well, thanks for that. As people may or may not know, the roughly 16-week legislative session is divided into 2 halves, and we're actually this week when we come back, this coming Friday, is the midpoint. It's referred to as crossover, and it's an internal working agreement between House and Senate. They agree to look at any bill that we vote out that makes crossover. It leaves the originating committee by this coming Friday, and vice versa. If you go longer than that, then the other side can say, we don't have time to look at it. You're giving it to us too late. So what both sides do is the Senate does all its own work in the first half, and we ship that to make crossover. And then the House does the same. And then we take what they've sent us in the first half, or even last year, and then we work on it in our second half. So the bottle bill and pretty much every House bill that's come over has, for the most part, been resting respectfully on the wall because we're doing our own work first. So I just want to make sure that people know that it's not like, oh, we're reluctant to work on it. We did the plastics bill, and we're interested in continuing to work on solid waste, which is a more challenging issue than anyone would ever rationally think about ahead of time. Trash brings us all together. That's all I've learned so far. The bottle bill is part of it, and we will definitely be moving the bottle bill. We'll take testimony. I don't know that it will leave the Senate unchanged, but the bill will move on. And if this is a very legislative thing to do. I went to the Redemption Center yesterday and had a half-hour chat with the guy who runs the place to learn more about how the bottle bill and the proposed changes would work or not work for his business. So I expect it will come out, and it's only been resting because we're busy doing Senate work first.
Well, that's great news. And I hope it will change at least a little, because I think a 5% deposit just isn't enough to incentivize people to bring your bottles back. So I would say at least 10 cents would be a good move.
Right.
So, but thank you. I'm really glad you'll be taking it up.
Right. If we were setting the deposit on the bottle bill and we wanted to adjust for inflation, because this was introduced, back 1970, it would be not a nickel per bottle, it'd be 32 cents right now. So
Whatever it takes to get people to bring their bottles back instead of dumping them on my roadside.
well, last year when we did the plastic bag bill, or maybe it's already 2 years ago, we looked at what would it take to get people to not just switch over to using disposable paper bags. And there were two proposals: charge a nickel a bag, charge a dime a bag. If you did a nickel a bag, roughly 60% of people would just go ahead and buy another paper bag, and then I don't know what they would do with it. If you went up to a dime, only 10% would use a bag. They would say, oh, I'm gonna, somehow a dime was a trigger. They got more people saying, I'm gonna change my habits. I'm gonna carry a bag to the store. And the transition was remarkably smooth and easy, even though we put in that dime, which was a floor fight, amazingly, but such is life in the legislature.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we have Linda.
Thank you. I think you all know that I'm a board member of the Turning Point Center in Addison County. And I'm wondering if there's a way that you can help Vermont to improve their addiction treatment and rehabilitation. Currently, Medicaid pays for only 2 weeks of treatment and rehab. This is residential. And this is not enough. So what we're having is these people going in for 2 weeks, going out, going in, going out, going in. It doesn't do any good. It totally wastes money. And yet New York and New Hampshire at least is up to a month that they can stay in rehab. But we only have 2 weeks. And it really needs to be looked at. And especially since, the opioid crisis is increasing, the isolation gets more people on it. And so anyways, is there any way that we can change that? I have no idea, but asking for your help.
Yeah, thank you, Linda, for that question. I believe, and Mike actually might know, so I'll that there's a House bill related to substance use services. Is that true, Mike? I see him nodding. So that when that bill comes over to the Senate, I don't know what's in it because I've been focusing on our Senate bills, but that would be an opportunity to look at that issue and see if there's a way we can increase the reimbursement for that type for the inpatient services. We have also talked about increasing potentially increasing support for the Blueprint for Health, which does the hub and spoke system for helping people who are experiencing substance use issues, including the MAT, medical assisted treatment. I was mixing it up with medical aid and dying, and I was like, I know that's wrong in my head. Yeah, I think there's going to be a bill in the second half of the session that will have an opportunity. And I'm not sure what the House has already done, but I can, if you get back to me in a few weeks, I might have more information for you.
Great. So it's residential that I'm looking at.
Residential. Okay.
Not inpatient in a hospital, residential.
Yeah. And
like Valley Vista is, we have 2 of them. Actually, that's about it for public. And
right.
Right
now, the issue for a lot of those inpatient anything is spots, beds open, and staffing. So a lot of that is making it really, really hard to provide the services because there's not sufficient staffing because of the workforce shortages across all sectors, but it's really impacting healthcare sectors severely. So, but I will let you know when I have more information on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Linda.
Okay, next we have Barb.
Great, thank you so much. This is for Ruth. In the beginning, you mentioned student mental health bill. I think you said that passed, and I'd love to learn a little bit more. I've been subbing since probably mid-November, and in several of our schools, moms as well as our elementary schools, and it's amazing how much I've seen as far as mental health issues. Our kids are really suffering, even the real young ones. All of a sudden, they'll just have a meltdown in a classroom. And really our education, the way we educate, we're just not equipped to handle that. And really am concerned about what's going to happen to these children. And this could be a long lasting impact on their lives. So I'm very interested in what the bill is that you just passed that has crossed over or will cross over.
Okay. Thanks, Barb, for that question. We actually have not yet passed a bill. We're working on it still. But there are two parts that I want to address. In the budget bill, which is currently in the House, people keep moving, so now I can't find you on my screen, but there you are, thank you. The budget bill, we will be increasing the reimbursement level rate for the DAs, the designated mental health agencies across the state, which in Addison County is, as you know, is the Counseling Services of Addison County. I don't know what the rate is that is in the House bill at the budget at this point. I know that the designated agencies have asked for a 10% increase in their Medicaid reimbursement rate. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to give them the full 10%, but I know that everybody's committed to increasing their rate, and that will really help schools, because most of the mental health counselors in schools are actually staff of designated agencies. So they're school-based counselors that are employed by CSAC and then work in our local schools. And that will provide more funding for our mental health agencies to be able to support schools. The bill, so that's one piece of it. And when the budget comes over to the Senate, I'll have a better idea of where we're at that point. And I know the Health and Welfare Committee will be advocating for making sure we have as much as we can afford in the budget. And one of the problems right now, I know everyone thinks we have a lot of money, but that is an ongoing expense. And most of the money we have is a one-time pot of money. So we have to be able to really ensure that we're budgeting our ongoing funding in a sustainable way. So that's what we're struggling with the support for our designated agencies. The bill that we're working on in the Senate has evolved quite significantly, and it sort of started out as a mental health planning bill, and then it has moved into a student mental health bill. Currently, right now, it's actually focused on after school and summer programs. I'm trying to shift the focus more to in-school and school-based services, because not all of our schools, even in this county, but certainly across the state, not all of our schools have school-based mental health clinicians in them. And I met yesterday with the care partners and our local CSAC people about what we could do to collaborate at the state level to make sure that there's a system in place to ensure that there are relationships built with local schools and their designated agencies to be able to provide those services. And so it's still work in progress at this point. But hopefully we, as Senator Bray said, we have one more week to pass bills out of committee. So hopefully we will get it finalized next week. And yeah.
What's the bill number?
It's S-197. But if you look at it right now, it doesn't look, it's really not complete.
No, just so I can watch it. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Sure,
Thank
of course. Yeah, thank you.
Can I toss in a little PSA here on bills and following bills? Because it's tricky, a bill is introduced, Senator Hardy was just mentioning, a bill is introduced can be such a long way away from where we currently are 2 months into the session. And it's not always easy to find. You can keep up though with the changes. So if you go to a committee's homepage and there is a tab in the center block that says bill, and then when you click on that tab, you'll see a list of every bill in the committee. And if you click on the bill itself, it brings up another window, and in that window is there's always a folder named drafts, amendments, and legal documents. So when you go to that drafts button, that tab, you'll get to see the most current version. And so it's very helpful to everyone, and to be able to find what the current version is. But it takes a little practice to learn how to get there, because it takes like 3 or 4 clicks. So anyway, it's homepage, the bill tab. Under the bill tab, you'll find another sub tab that tells you drafts. So that's my PSA for today.
Thank you. Next on our list is Darla, and then I think we'll wrap up with Carolyn and then Roger.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Darla Sedicle here. I live in Bristol. I was encouraged to come tonight and talk to you folks about by Sue White and Cheryl Mitchell to ask for some support or continued support for the Early Childhood Leadership Institute. I'm a graduate of that program from 2018. It was instrumental in the work that I do now. I came across that training as I was transitioning from a long career here in Bristol as the recreation director, and went to work for Building Bright Futures, which you guys know intimately well in Montpelier. So with that, the networking that happened through that 6-month period of taking that class, the information that was gleaned from that, the knowledge base that I was able to acquire, the level of confidence, and just all of the resources that were available to me through that class, through presenters like Reva Cousineau and Hal Coulson, really changed the trajectory of my career and how I approach it. Also gave me the confidence to run for select board here in Bristol. I was elected 2 years ago and just recently re-elected, so I feel like I'm on a good path. But I really would love to see continued support of that program. It was really life-changing for me in a number of ways, especially the work that Hal Coulson did with our program and talking to us about equity and how Vermonters are affected by this. I, at the time, had this euphoric idea that because I treated everyone the same, that was okay, and that's how I should do that. And I learned a lot from Hal and about his experiences and his family's experiences. So I would just like to speak in support of that program and ask for your continued support there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Darla. You're the second person today to pitch that program to me. I know it well. That I am a Vermont Leadership Institute, as is Senator Bray, graduate, and we will have childcare bills in the second part of the session, and I will see if there is a way to sort of add that in as an option. As you probably know, we have provided a lot of support for continuing education for childcare providers, and hopefully we can insert that in. If I find an opportunity, I will try.
Thanks so much. The breadth of folks that attended that class with me was remarkable. I still see those. I have those connections, and they really are meaningful in my work. So,
great, thanks.
So, Darla, I have a really quick question. So that's operated by the Snelling Center for Government, correct?
Correct.
And I don't know if we give them a grant, at least for the program that Ruth and I went through, Vermont Leadership Institute. I don't know about the education version. Do you know if there's any kind of state funding that goes to them to run that program?
I believe there's a basic amount of funding that was funneled to them. I'm not sure the path that it takes.
Yeah. Okay.
And Cheryl Mitchell would be a great contact. She could tell you the ins and outs of that for sure.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thanks for pitching it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for your work as well.
Okay, next we have Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Keebler. I live in Middlebury. And first, I just want to thank Ruth and Chris for working so hard for all of us and listening to us here tonight. And for your support also of the environmental justice bill. I was really excited that S-148 seems to have been doing well, going through. And I think that's going to go a long way to making some of these energy benefits available to more people in Vermont. So that's really great. And I'm wondering, also the weatherization, that sounds great too, that you're expanding the weatherization program. I think is huge. And for all the reasons you talked about, Chris, I think is really important. So I'm excited to see that getting to be more available for more people. And I guess one of the other things I wanted to ask about was this bill called S232, the Renewable Energy Standards Bill. I'm not really sure if that's, if there's anything new going on with that. I might not have looked at the site very well. I only saw it as introduced and had some concerns about the way that energy is being accounted for, what's being called renewable, and whether it's really going to help us with our greenhouse gas emissions and protecting our ecosystems, or if it's just going to allow us to keep using Hydro-Quebec and sort of other energy sources that aren't really all that helpful when it comes to climate change. So I'm wondering if you could speak about S232 a little bit.
Sure. So this could be a black hole of wonkiness, but I'm going to avoid that. The short of it with S232 is the proposal in it, and I'll give the punchline. I'd say right now that bill is not going to move, and because there's a conflict that's it's brought up, and that is, it says for our renewable energy standard that right now, so Vermont has the cleanest grid in the United States by virtue of the fact that we have, in a stepwise progression, told utilities they have to have a larger and larger percentage of renewable energy in their portfolio. So right now, on average in Vermont, 63% of the energy that's on our grid is renewable, but 3 utilities, Burlington Electric, Washington Electric, and Swanton Electric, are actually at 100% renewable already. So the importance of all that is, people know, is if we're talking about using electricity more and more to heat our homes, like cold climate heat pumps, or heat pump hot water heaters, or for transportation, like electric vehicles, plug-in electrics, we want to be drawing clean power out of a clean grid to do that. Otherwise, we're kind of kidding ourselves about what we're getting done. So this picked up the pace on our renewable portfolio that every utility had to have, and it said, let's get to 100% by 2030. So actually the utilities were supportive of that. Tier 2 in our renewable energy standard is how much energy must be produced in state renewably of that whatever percent we're aiming for. And the current law says 10% has to be produced in state. The renewable energy industry in the state of Vermont, primarily solar, said we'd like to have a larger slice of the pie and make that 20%. So there was basically there's a little bit of a back and forth. Utilities would like to say, we are happy to buy 100% renewable, but we want to go to the market and find the least expensive version because that helps us keep our rates down. The renewable industry in Vermont said, well, there's some issues with the way you're doing your math and the quality of that renewable power. Let's move our percentage up. They haven't seen eye to eye yet. And I'm trying to turn this into a formal proceeding at the PUC. So we'll have expert non-legislative analysis that will look at the costs and benefits of different ways of building a clean portfolio for the state of Vermont. And remarkably, even the idea that we'll study it together is proving contentious. But I would still like to get that done, because otherwise this question will stay on the table and we won't have good information to sort it out yet again next year. And this is already 3 years running. I've been trying to help us nudge this forward. So it's a good question, and I think I've probably dipped into the wonky zone a little more than the average person wants to hear about, but that's what's going on there.
Well, that's what we're here for, the wonky zone. So appreciate it. I'll try to process that, and hopefully the solar people will win this one. So thanks a lot.
I'm happy to talk with you further if you want to follow up off after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and we will end with our last question from Roger. Thank you to everyone who waited patiently.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Senator Bray and Senator Hardy. I appreciate your time and also the effort that you brought to climate-related issues in the Senate. Caroline basically asked my question about the renewable energy standard. And as much as I love the wonkiness, I will retract it, except to say that, does it seem a bit of an overstatement to even say that utilities have reached 100% renewable, given that a lot of that is coming from out-of-state generation from large-scale hydropower? And is it possible, like, to sort of develop a language that accounts for the impact of Hydro-Quebec, like from the get-go as we go forward with the notion of standards?
Right. Well, one of the things, so that's a good question, and it's really going to be this is why I actually want to have a full legal proceeding, because then all the parties who have questions and different points of view can express them in a public format. So we'll have transparency. We'll be able to weigh out the pros and cons. For instance, on Hydro-Quebec, the most damning thing I hear is, well, they flooded a tremendous amount of land, so there were impact on indigenous peoples, and that flooding is actually doing things like releasing CO2 into the atmosphere by virtue of like the accelerated breakdown of organic materials that were flooded. It's not, some people say it's not as clean as, others are representing it to be. So my sense is that we just need to let the chips fall where they may and get our facts and science straight, because as legislators, we have a fiduciary responsibility to people. We need to get to the facts, not just operate on opinions. And so I hope that before we go home, I can cajole, or whatever it takes, people into committing to a full, fair, and public review of the issues, so that the next legislature can convene and make progress on this issue, which is run aground for 3 years at a time, where we really can't afford to lose any more time on making more progress on climate change.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone who asked a question, and thank you all for being here. Senators, if you'd like to give some wrap-up words, everyone have a great night. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. We both are accessible via email, rhardy@ledge.state.vt.us, and Cbray at the same thing. And very happy to see all of you, and hopefully we can do another one of these later in the session. And please reach out if you have further questions, and watch us on YouTube still.
Wow. All right. I'm hoping everyone has a more exciting life than watching us on YouTube. But if you're so inclined, we are on the air every day. So almost. All right. Great to see you all. And, this has been fun. I hope we do it actually again, even once we go back in person. This is a great way for people to be able to get together without having to get your car, drive to Montpelier or whatever. So
yeah.
Thanks again to Sally for setting this up for Senator Hardy and me.
Yeah. Thanks, Sally. Have a good night, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank
and
you,
well.
Ruth. Thank you, Chris.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Great.